Hello, everybody. It's your boy, the Punk Otaku Scribe, and welcome back to another Batman Capes Crusader review. This time, looking at episodes 7 through 8. Now, up until this point, I have loved this show by every minute. I've loved every character, every way every villain has been portrayed. This just has worked for me all the way up until this point. We're in the home stretch now, and here I thought, okay, we're finally going to get into some really chaotic territory. This series has been going up and up and up, and it's going to get higher and higher, and it's going to end with a bang. And uh, episode 7 kind of made me think that maybe that wasn't the case. So we open up on episode 7, and it opens up on a trial that Barbara Gordon has just gotten out of. The criminal she represented got off. And Jim Gordon is not that happy about it. He did, in fact, do the crime, but Barbara got him off via circumstances. She believes that despite the fact that he did the crime, that he's still innocent. Not that he didn't do the crime, but more of he did it because of the circumstances that were laid before him. And she and Jim Gordon have an argument about that, about whether circumstances matter, whether you're a criminal. Is it black and white? Is justice gray, black and white? What does it all mean, right? They have a bit of an argument debate about that. And after they do, they step outside to the steps of the courthouse, and an attempt is made on their life. And I'll get to the assailant in just a second, because the assassin actually is named. But an assassin calls out to them and says, "Hey, Gordon," and pulls out a shooty shoot. Gotta keep it innocent for YouTube. Don't know what I can say or can't say. He pulls out a shooty shoot and he tries to do the deed as an assassin, and it doesn't work. Now, after this, there's a scene where they're all gathered at the GCPD to figure out who made this happen, what's going on, and they name the assassin. And if you're a DC fan, you'll recognize the name immediately. They name the assassin as Floyd Lawton, who, if you know this lore, would know that that's a dead shot. And after my initial fandom, freak out moment, hearing that name, I actually realized I didn't like that. They essentially made a dead shot a nobody, potentially nobody, because of what happens to him. I have no idea what this show of the future holds, or the future of the show holds, but what happens to the assassin, they essentially relegated Deadshot to just a cameo hitman, essentially. Yeah, wasn't that crazy about that? It was a wink, wink for a wink, wink sake. Whatever. It's one of the last things that, or one of the things that this show has done that I wasn't that crazy about. Which that was kind of this whole episode. It was weird. It was chock full of things that just I wasn't that crazy about. So the story of this episode should have been an exciting thrill ride considering what it's about. They're essentially trying to hide Jim Gordon from this would-be assassin, and there's this sort of sense of dread going around of, oh, who can we trust? Who can't we trust? Where should we go? Where should we hide? Uh, but again, there was just something about it that just didn't quite grab me. I think it's for the characters themselves. Jim Gordon in this show, like I said, I like every character in the show, but even I can admit that Jim Gordon is kind of in this show, and maybe that's what it was. The show is essentially like trying to make you care about his life, and while yes, you don't want a main character to be killed off, especially one that is a good hero, in the hero sense, you gotta care about the character, and I feel like if they had been successful in assassinating Jim Gordon in this, I would have been like, "Oh, that's sad," and then moved on. It wouldn't have hit me that much. I don't think. Um, the villain in this episode was actually a villain I was not familiar with. I actually had to research him when after I was done watching this episode. The villain that is showcased here is Onomatopoeia. Now, this character was created by Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith, if you don't know, is a director of those View Askew universe movies, the Giant Silent Bob, those movies. He's a director of those. He created this character, and this character wasn't even a Batman villain at first. He was a Green Arrow villain and first appeared in a Green Arrow comic in 2001, I want to say. Yeah, a character I did not know at all, but researching him, he's really interesting. He's sort of, I would suppose, like an inspiration or like an homage to the old Batman cartoons and the '60s live action show with, when they would punch a criminal, it would go pow and bing, right? And that's essentially his thing. He speaks in onomatopoeia. He speaks in those actions. In this episode, when he's fighting Batman, he does that. He goes swish, swoosh, pow, bim, bam. And it's kind of goofy. It's kind of silly. It's fun, but they didn't do much else with him. Up until now, every villain has had a good twist on them, right? They've had something interesting done with them. This guy is really just the boss of the hitman that is out to assassinate Jim Gordon. And that's really about it. Even when he's fighting Batman, it's a okay sequence. It's like, well, Batman's just fighting a guy. You know, apparently that's this villain's thing in DC lore is he goes after the non-powered guys, which is why he is a Green Arrow villain. He is a Batman villain. Uh, name anyone in the Bat family. I'm sure he's gone after them at some point. But that's his thing. I like his design though. I like the target looking thing on his face. I like the fact that he looks like he has a target mask. I liked his look in this, and I like his look in other iterations. But in this episode, they didn't really do much with him, and they didn't really do much with this premise. At the end of the episode, they try to do this thing with Barbara Gordon where they find out who put out the hit and everything, and Barbara Gordon is talking to this person, and he makes a point about, you did this to my life. I could have walked away, and you basically betrayed me, that kind of thing. And she tells him, well, not everything is black and white, or something to the effect of that. Again, I don't remember this episode that well. It wasn't that great, but they tried to give her this like moral dilemma, and for me, it just didn't work. I don't know. This isn't one that I'll say, oh, you can skip this one, because I'm sure it's got some important notes that they'll give Barbara Gordon later on, but it is pretty underwhelming. So if you haven't seen the show yet, just be warned that this one is just okay in comparison to everything else. Moving on from episode 7, though, and getting into episode 8. Episode 8 is a perfect palate cleanser from episode 7. You go from this episode that you think is just okay, but then your love for the show gets revitalized with episode 8 because it gets right back on track with the writing and the tension that they've been building up, and some more villain character study. This episode is really creepy and disturbing because of the content with it. And it sort of felt like an episode of the animated series that was sort of similar to it. That I'll give the comparison in a second. So, in this episode, a carnival comes to town that the orphanage takes a field trip in. And there is a villain stalking the carnival, taking kids and essentially absorbing their life essence for their own use. The villain in question is Nocturna, which when I saw Natalia Nocturna, I was floored. I was like, I can't believe that this show keeps coming at us with the obscure villains. As much as I was not impressed by him, Onomatopoeia, and then right into Nocturna, this show knows what it's doing. There's also some really interesting nods to other Batman DC characters in here. There's 3 kids in this episode, and they all essentially have the names of Batman's Robins. There's Carrie, there's Jason, and there's Dickie. They name him Dickie. They don't call him Dick. His name is Dickie. So I don't think that they're trying to say that that's Dick Grayson, but I don't know. Again, we don't know what this show has in store for us, but I thought at least that was a cool little nod to Robin with those 3 kids. This episode really creeped me out, of course, because of the content. It went as far as to have kids be victimized by this villain. And this villain is taking glee in it, which makes it even creepier. And near the end of the episode, when this villain, when Nocturna finds out that her actions have killed someone close to her, she just wants it all to end. The sun is about to rise, it's about to take her, and she just wants it all to end. And there's this moral quandary. Do you feel bad for this character? Is it morally right for you to feel bad for this character? Because again, they took glee in their actions, or did they? Is it something where they only did it because they felt like it was the only way that they could survive? Who knows? But at the end of the day, it made for some really heartbreaking stuff. Before the character that Nocturna cares for dies, he makes Batman promise him that he'll protect her. And despite her actions, Batman, being the hero he is, he does that. She begs Batman to leave her, to let it all end, and he won't. He saves her. And I really wonder if Batman himself, if he were not made to keep that promise, if he would have forgiven her. I don't think he would have let her die, but I wonder if he would have been harsher on her had he not been made to make the promise to keep her protected and to keep her safe, despite what she has done. The other half of this episode focuses on Harvey Dent, which up until this point he hasn't really been focused on too much. He was early on, then kind of in the middle, he's sort of gone. But in the episodes that he is focused on, it's clear that he's running for mayor. It's a common story with Harvey Dent that he's running for mayor, right? And here they go and focus back on that. He's shaking hands, kissing babies for his campaign. He's getting involved in the carnival shenanigans and getting dunked in the dunk tank, that kind of thing, right? But in the shadows, he's getting help from a crime boss for his campaign to move forward. And he has this moral quandary. Again, this episode had a couple moral quandaries about it. He has this moral quandary of should he let this guy, because he's a lawyer first and foremost, should he let this guy go or not? Should he snitch, essentially? And the guy that he's going to snitch against is in the interest of the criminal that is funding his campaign. So he's got a lot riding on this. And in the courtroom, he does not give the verdict that or at least the passing of justice that the criminal boss wants, and it ends up bad for him in the end. We all know that Harvey Dent becomes Two-Face, so this won't come as a shocker, but this action that Harvey Dent does in the courtroom uh, ends with the tease that he will be Two-Face, without saying too much about what happens, but it happens. And it's actually kind of shocking when it does, because it's a brutal assault, and Diedrich Bader's screams of pain really sell it. They're kind of horrifying, and I think the fact that it's not shown, or at least rather, you see it from his point of view, and the fact that it's not shown actually makes it a lot creepier. I've seen the pictures of what he ends up looking like later on, and I think that if they made like a body horror thing out of that, like we actually saw it happen, it wouldn't have had as much impact. So I really respect that they went there, that they had the restraint to show the assault from his POV, but they didn't show the full effect, the full results. They left it to your imagination, and that's kind of what this show does best. Is it just makes you feel that creep factor they're going for? Like that. Ooh, that doesn't feel right at all. I wonder what that might have looked like. That was a really smart decision. This is kind of a quick one. We're only talking about 2 episodes here, and I didn't have much to say about either one of them, because especially with episode 8, there was a lot of spoiler factor going on, and I spoiled it a little bit, but I didn't want to get too deep into them. I still think that there's some elements in both episodes that I think you should go in kind of cold with, but episode 7 was not crazy about. It was just okay. If I had to rate it, it was maybe about a 5 or a 6 out of 10. Onomatopoeia was fun. Just wish that they did more with him, that he was a bit more interesting. And Nocturna was entirely interesting. The moral dilemma of, should she be forgiven? Should she be saved? They don't really go into that in the writing, but you do see that they were going for that to make you make that judgment, considering that you've seen what she's done, but you also did see that Batman was made to keep a promise. Yeah, I love this show. Even with episode 7, I still love it. And I've heard some things about episodes 9 and 10, which apparently is a two-parter. Kind of excited to get to it. So when we come back in the next video, that's what we're going to talk about. So heading into the last 2 episodes, I'm excited. Um, can't wait to see what they pull off. And again, if you've been watching this show, I'd love to know what you thought about it, especially if you're not really digging it. Because I can't see. I mean, I can really see how people wouldn't like the show. You know, everyone has different opinions, but I really can't see too many negatives about it. I'm not seeing them anyway. So if anyone can point them out to me, I really would love to just hear that perspective and have that conversation, have that open dialogue, because I just feel like the show is nearly perfect, really. At least this season. Again, episode 3 with Catwoman I thought was kind of just okay, and then of course episode 6 Onomatopoeia was even more meh. But still, this season has taken me for a ride, man. And I've loved every minute of it. So let me know down in the comments. Let's talk everything Batman and DC Comics down there, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.